and the weight of the day. He stood alone by the corral, his eyes scanning the horizon as he stroked the neck of his favorite mule, Dusty. She was the strongest animal he'd ever owned, steady, strong, and dependable. In this unforgiving land, a good mule could mean the difference between life and death. Yet, today, Jake had made a decision that would change everything. He never thought he'd be called to make such a sacrifice, but here he was, wrestling with the weight of a promise he had made hours earlier. Dusty, his best mule, was about to be given away, not for any reward, but for a chance at something bigger than himself. In the distance, the figures of two young Apache sisters, Taya and Rena, appeared like ghosts on the horizon, barely visible through the haze of heat. The sisters were close to their escape now, fleeing the violence that had torn their people apart. But they could only go as far as their legs would carry them, and their father, their protector, was still far from reaching them. They were running out of time. The sound of hooves approaching startled Jake from his thoughts. It was the two sisters, riding in haste, with their faces drawn and their eyes wide with fear. They had come to him not just as strangers, but as a symbol of what his heart had always believed in, that sometimes, helping others required something more than mere kindness, it required sacrifice. "Jake, please, you have to help us," Taya's voice trembled, her words barely audible over the pounding hooves of the horses she and her sister had been riding. The Apache had been at war for as long as Jake could remember. He'd seen them as enemies, as threats, but when he'd watched these two sisters run from the soldiers who had been hunting their people, something in his heart had shifted. They were just children, children who had lost everything. "I can't outrun the soldiers," Jake said quietly, his words hanging in the air between them like a heavy stone. "I've got nothing left for you. Please, Jake, our father is coming, but he won't make it in time. We need to be far away before he arrives." Her plea hung in the air, making the silence feel even heavier. Jake's gaze moved back to his mule, Dusty, standing like a loyal sentinel by the fence. In that moment, everything he had ever known seemed to pause. The thought of giving up Dusty was unfathomable. He had raised her since she was a colt. She had helped him through more hardships than he cared to remember. And yet, here were these two young sisters, their lives in danger, running from a world that had never been kind to them. He could turn them away. After all, it was his life at stake, wasn't it? But then again, he remembered his father's words, "You don't measure the worth of a man by the things he owns. You measure him by what he's willing to give away." Jake's heart clenched. The thought of losing Dusty was like losing a part of himself, but in that moment, he realized something even more important. What was his life if not for others? What was his happiness if not for the well-being of those in need? Without saying a word, he walked toward the mule, unlatched the gate, and gently led Dusty out. The two sisters stared at him, wide-eyed. "Jake, no. We can't take her," Taya said, looking down at the mule. "She's your only means of escape." "She's not mine anymore," Jake said quietly. "She's yours, for as long as you need her." He passed the reins to Taya and then nodded toward the horizon. "Your father won't make it if you don't ride fast. Go. I'll hold them off." Taya's eyes filled with gratitude, but there was something else there too, fear, uncertainty. "What will you do?" she asked, her voice breaking. "I'll buy you time," Jake replied, his voice steady despite the storm of emotions inside him. "Now, go." The sisters hesitated, but only for a moment. They mounted the mule, and with one last glance back at Jake, they spurred her into motion. Dusty, though unfamiliar with the sisters, was already galloping as if she'd known them her entire life, as if her bond with Jake was enough to trust them with her own life. Jake stood alone as the sisters disappeared into the distance. The sky darkened, and the wind began to pick up, dust swirling in the air. He knew he had little time. If the soldiers came through here before nightfall, they would be too close to catch the girls. He needed to buy them every second he could. For the next hour, Jake rode hard, kicking up the desert dirt as he moved westward, creating a trail of dust that would lead the soldiers away from the sisters. He moved with purpose, his heart pounding in his chest, but a sense of peace settled in him. His act of kindness wasn't something anyone could easily understand. It was a gamble, and he might not survive the consequences. But that didn't matter now. What mattered was that, for the first time in a long time, Jake had chosen to be a part of something bigger than himself. As the sun began to set, Jake's thoughts turned toward the sisters, knowing they would be far ahead by now, safely out of reach. They had done it. They had escaped. He couldn't hear the soldiers yet, but he knew it wouldn't be long. And then, just as the last light of day dipped below the horizon, Jake saw a figure in the distance. His heart leapt as the man's face came into focus, the man he had been waiting for, the one the girls had been desperate to find, their father. The Apache leader rode toward him at a steady pace, a man whose weathered face told a story of countless battles and struggles, yet whose eyes softened at the sight of Jake. "I know what you did," the Apache father said quietly, his voice full of quiet respect. "Thank you." Jake swallowed hard, feeling the weight of the day catch up to him. He wasn't sure if he had done the right thing, but looking at the father, he realized he had done what his heart had told him to do. As the father rode off to reunite with his daughters, Jake's heart swelled with pride. The world wasn't perfect, far from it, but in this moment, he had made a choice. It was a small one, maybe, but it was a choice that made all the difference. The stars began to twinkle in the sky as Jake made his way back to his cabin. He didn't need Dusty anymore. He had given up what was his in order to save others. And though he'd lost something dear to him, he had gained something far more valuable, a sense of purpose, of compassion, and the deep satisfaction of knowing that sometimes, the greatest acts of courage come not from fighting battles, but from knowing when to let go. The sun had set. The Apache sisters were safe. Their father had arrived, and Jake Tyler walked home, the quiet desert air wrapping around him like a promise. And in that silence, as the stars stretched across the sky, Jake knew that kindness and sacrifice, the things that often went unnoticed, were the true markers of a life well lived.